Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where we're checking out a video recommended by Susan, and the title of this video is Switzerland, Norway, and Iceland refuse to join the EU. Why? And if you guys also want to recommend any videos like Susan did, you can click that link in the pinned comment section. It is a Google form where you can recommend videos using that Google form, and I'll check them out as soon as possible. And yeah, please do like and subscribe, and let's find out why Switzerland, Norway, and Iceland refuse to join the EU.
When someone says the EU, many first think of Europe, but this isn't entirely accurate. The European Union has only 27 member states, and even though some European countries have long, rich histories with their EU cousins, they've decided
Switzerland is not in the EU.
to remain outside of the Union. This is the case of Switzerland, Norway, and Iceland. But why are these three countries so closely linked to a shared European identity, not part of the EU? As always, let's take a look at where these three countries are located on a map. First up is Norway. This Nordic nation sits right at the top of the Scandinavian peninsula, with direct access to the North Sea, the Arctic Circle, and the mouth of the Baltic Sea. Norway borders with two EU members, Finland and Sweden. Second is Iceland. Iceland is by far the most isolated of the European nations, with many mapmakers sadly forgetting to include it in their sketches of the continent. The closest EU neighbor is Ireland, over 1,400 kilometers away. Last but not least is Switzerland. This is the country that many forget isn't part of the EU, as it sits right at the heart of the continent and is surrounded by central EU states. France, Germany, Italy, and Austria all share a border with this alpine haven. Let's take a look at each one's relationship with the Union and why they've decided not to join. Norway has made attempts to join the EU on two notable occasions. Initially, the country applied to what was then called the European Economic Community in 1962. However, when France under President Charles de Gaulle vetoed the UK's application to join the EEC in 1963 and 1967, Norway's bid was indirectly affected. Since Norway's application was contingent on UK membership, along with the applications of Denmark and Ireland, Norway decided to suspend its application both times. Eventually, negotiations successfully concluded in 1972, leading to a referendum where the Norwegian people voted against joining. A subsequent referendum in 1994 also saw Norwegians voting against EU membership, albeit by a closer margin. Since then, Norway has not actively pursued full membership. Several factors contribute to Norway's hesitation to join the EU. The big problem is fish. Norway places significant emphasis on maintaining control over its fisheries sector, which is a vital part of its economy. If Norway were to join the EU, it would have to follow the EU's common fisheries policy. This policy would allow other EU countries to fish in Norwegian waters, albeit with strict rules. Additionally, Norway would be subject to the EU's total allowable catches system, designed for sustainable management of fish stocks, which might differ from Norway's preferred management practices. There are also economic concerns beyond fisheries. Norway's vast natural resources, especially oil and gas, play a pivotal role in its economy. Some Norwegians are concerned that EU membership might impact the country's autonomy over these resources. Then there's national sovereignty. Many Norwegians are cautious about ceding aspects of their sovereignty to Brussels and the broader administrative structure. So what about Iceland? Iceland applied to join the EU in 2009 in the aftermath of the financial crisis, with many believing that membership might offer greater economic stability. However, with a change in government in 2013, the country's direction toward EU accession shifted, and the application process stalled. Central to Iceland's hesitation, similar to Norway, is the desire to protect its vital fishing industry from potential disruptions under the EU's common fisheries policy. Beyond fisheries, concerns about maintaining national sovereignty, potential impacts on the small but protected agriculture sector, and the advantages of having control over their own currency have also influenced the debate. While Icelanders have never voted in a referendum specifically on EU membership, public sentiment has shifted over time, influenced by both domestic and international events, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Finally, we come to Switzerland. The Swiss people have
This is the one that is unique, okay? Norway, Iceland, respectfully, okay, Norway is more understandable, honestly, to wanting to, not be a part of the EU. But Switzerland is the one that is weird, It's like being around a bunch of like your friend group is all doctors, and you're I gotta think of something great. I was gonna say a garbage collector, and I think that would be very insulting for Switzerland. So I gotta think of something great. Um, yeah, all your friends are doctors, but you're a freaking programmer. You program computers, and it's like, wait, what? So all your friends are doctors, but you do computer stuff? Yeah, strange. That's Switzerland. Successful in everything, but surrounded by a bunch of EU members, and like, nah, I'm cool.
Traditionally shown limited interest in joining the EU. In the early 1990s, the government did pursue an application to join the European Economic Area, a stepping stone to EU membership. But after a rejection by the Swiss electorate in a 1992 referendum, this effort was suspended. In fact, in 2018, a survey found that only 3% even considered joining the EU a possibility. This reluctance stems not just from their commitment to neutrality, but also from their unique political and economic circumstances. Switzerland's system of direct democracy, where key decisions are often put to public referendums, makes ceding any decision-making power to Brussels problematic. Over the years, Switzerland has negotiated a series of bilateral agreements with the EU, granting them many of the benefits of the single market without perceived drawbacks of full membership. These agreements, for many in Switzerland, represent the best of both worlds. They allow for economic collaboration while preserving Swiss autonomy. For example, the Swiss cherish their financial autonomy, especially given the country's status as a global banking and financial hub.
Right.
Thus, concerns about EU regulations potentially affecting the sector play a big role. And no, unlike some of their Nordic neighbors, the Swiss reservations aren't about protecting the fishing industry. After all, fish are pretty safe in the Alps. But what about now? What agreements do these countries have with the EU in the modern day? None of these three countries are technically part of the EU, but they're closely tied in various ways. All three countries are part of the Schengen area, facilitating passport-free travel across borders. However, this doesn't automatically grant the right to work. Additional permissions might be required. Both Iceland and Norway are members of the European Economic Area, which allows them to participate in the single market. This means they have to contribute to the EU budget, adopt certain EU laws without having direct representation in the European Parliament, and are exempt from some EU policies, notably in areas such as fishing. Switzerland, on the other hand, accesses parts of the single market through a series of bilateral agreements with the EU. All three, along with Liechtenstein, are members of the European Free Trade Association, also called EFTA. Founded in 1960 as an alternative to the then European Economic Community, which later evolved into the EU, the EFTA aimed to promote free trade and economic integration. The original members included Denmark, Norway, Switzerland, Sweden, Austria, the UK, and later Portugal joined the fold. Today, only 4 members...
I had word that the UK might join the EU. Rejoin, like, literally. I don't remember where I saw that video, but people were like, yeah, that was a big mistake, man. I don't know. Let's see what happened.
Remain Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. EFTA promotes free trade among its members and with other countries, and its members cooperate closely with the EU, ensuring smooth trade and collaboration across Europe. So the big question is, which one of these three countries is most likely to join the European Union? We don't believe any of these three countries will join the EU anytime soon. But we know for sure that Switzerland isn't keen on the idea at all. Public opinion on joining is incredibly low, and the country's dedication to neutrality is simply too fierce. It would take a string of massive geopolitical events to sway the Swiss people over to a pro-EU side. Overall, Iceland is probably the most likely to join of the three. As
Yes.
it's already part of the EEA, it has close ties to the EU, and a decisive referendum on joining has never been held. The 2009 recession also showed the Icelandic people the value the EU economic union offered, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine has many looking to their European neighbors for solidarity. Still, we see no big reason for any of these countries to join at the moment. They all enjoy close relations with the EU, take part in many of its agreements, and contribute in their own way to the European project. The European Union has bigger fish to fry, and these three are already strong allies as it stands. But what do you think? Should these countries join the EU, or should they rather stay?
Nah, if you can benefit from the EU and also contribute to the EU without being a part of it, it's better that way, especially for Switzerland and Norway. I think they are the two that makes a lot more sense to not be a part of. Iceland, I don't know. You probably should jump in there if you can, because I don't think there's anything major preventing Iceland from joining Norway. They got the fishes. Switzerland, they got the bank, the neutrality. They don't want to switch up, right? And it's as simple as that. I do believe that those countries are better off out of the EU at the moment. But Iceland, I don't know. 2009 is quite recent. You know what I mean? I might have been a kid back in 2009, but I'm still not that old. So, yeah, definitely Iceland. If any out of the three were supposed to join, I would not be surprised if Iceland was the first one to join, simply because it's probably going to be more beneficial for them rather than for any of these other two countries. But hey, shout out to them for being able to, agree upon something that benefits them and also benefits the EU without actually having to deal with a lot of the negative consequences of being a part of the EU, which is quite beneficial if you ask me. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something like I did. Anyways, man, I'm out of here. Peace.